Talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. It feels alright.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Thursday, nearly the weekend, folks, and it means I'm joined by Supermac and Gibbo. How are you doing, lads?
Good, thanks, Steve.
Great stuff. Good to see you guys. And as always, 1 hour to chat about Newcastle United. And let's start in the boardroom. And we've heard a little bit, haven't we, in this last week from PIF, our chairman, Al Ramayan. We've heard from Darren Eales, we've heard from Dan Ashworth. Collectively, John, what are your views on what we've heard?
Yeah, all positive, as I would expect it to be. I don't know, the last time we've heard from three guys from the boardroom, all within a week. It certainly wasn't with Mike Ashley. I think we got 3 apologies in 14 years with Ashley, which had a hollow ring to it anyway. Yes, I mean, nothing I wouldn't have expected, but all positive. I mean, the big thing that's come out of it, apart from deciding on the name of St. James's Park and the consultation with supporters over that, which I think is absolutely brilliant and absolutely necessary, because they're fully aware of the rough sort of way Ashley tried to impose it on fans that detested him anyway, and that really got a huge backlash. These people don't want anything like that, so that's up for discussion. But otherwise, it's what I would expect. And it emphasizes the points that I have made, which is the Fair Play League, which is really, I mean, it's incredibly boring. It's incredibly important because it determines what we can do and what we can't do. But it's both boring to fans and confusing in at the same time. Because, for example, we are tagged, and of course that's what Eales is going to do and what Dan Ashworth's been on about, and which is why they're going to get a commercial manager in the next few days, the guy that was once at Arsenal, to sort of boost our sponsorship deals, commercial deals, etc., because we're really hamstrung over that. It doesn't matter how much money the owners might have, even if they wanted to use it all, and I'm not suggesting they do by any means, they couldn't because of the Financial Fair Play League, because you can only spend a percentage of what you earn, and we aren't earning enough because Ashley run us down, off the field. And if, I mean, my perfect example, guys, and I've given it this weekend, is this weekend's game. We are allegedly the richest club in the world. I say allegedly because we can't punch it that weight. And if we can't punch it that weight, for me, we're not that until we can really flex our muscles. Manchester, so it's the two little spoiled rich guys playing each other this weekend, Manchester United, Newcastle United. But yet, if you look at the financial clout both clubs currently have because of fair play, I mean, our ceiling in the transfer market was 40 million, wasn't it? Until we broke it with 60 million for Isaac. But our ceiling was 40 million. We've done a 60 million for Isaac. Now, if you look at the Manchester United squad, believe it or not, 9 of the current squad cost 50 million or more. 9 of the current squad. They've spent 569.32 million on those 9 players. And I ask you whether they've got value for money when I tell you that Anthony, the winger, who was criticised by Gary Neville because he doesn't work back, and Anthony, 85 million. Maguire, the centre-half who can't get in the Manchester United side, I know he's injured at the moment, but before that can't get in, 78 million. Sancho can't get in the team, 76.5 million. Fred, who plays like Wraith said Fred, 53 million. I mean, in those 9, Ronaldo's not in because he's middle 30s and only costs 15 million. But he's costing a reputed £500,000 per week in wages. And they also wasted 94.5 million on Pogba, who they've thrown out, and 76.5 million on Lukaku, who they've thrown out. So their value for money is nil. We've had terrific value for money since the new owners come in, but we can't punch at that weight, even if we wanted to, through Fair Play League. So that's what Eels has gone on about in the last 2 days, etc., etc. We've got to get our commercial side up and running to give us the leverage. We don't want to spend like them, by the way, because they've spent atrociously, but we want to spend beyond what we're doing at the moment, and we're going to have to.
And the new guy that's coming in, they're wanting him to really go big on sponsorship, aren't they?
Oh, yes, because everything's determined by that, Malcolm. Everything is determined by getting those streams up and running.
Yeah.
They were ignored by Ashley because he wasn't looking to make us a top 4 club.
Well, no, because
to keep us in the league.
Sure, there was shirt sponsorship, but good heavens above, everything around the stadium was Sports Direct.
Sure.
And I spoke with a guy I know who's got an advertising company, and I said, can you roughly tell me how much it would cost to have all of that advertising around St James Park? And there are companies that they clock. They watch all the football and they clock how many seconds of advertising a particular company is getting, and therefore how much it would cost to have that amount of advertising. And for Sports Direct, they reckoned over a season it was valued at over £1 billion. The advertising. Absolutely phenomenal. And Ashley was getting that for next to nothing.
That's why he bought the club, Malcolm. So
that's why he bought it. Yes, indeed.
And of course, that is why the new board will talk with fans about the naming of St James's Park, because that is the one of the ways that money can be raised very, very quickly.
Right. Well, Ashley wanted to change it, John, didn't he?
Yeah, well, these do, but only in as much as putting a sponsorship name perhaps on the end of St James's Park to get money that way.
Yes.
Steve, as somebody that...
But they're doing it in a respectful way, aren't they? Which Ashley never did.
Yeah, but what I'm interested in, Steve, this question's for you as a consequence. You know all of the fans and the fan groups, etc., etc. How do you think the reaction will be to that request from NUFC?
Look, any communication is good communication when it comes from your football club. And I think from my perspective as a supporter, it's great to see. It's something we campaigned for many, many years. It's something we had meetings at the Irish club about. You, me, Malcolm Dix, God bless him, and many other supporters from up and down the country and around the region. People who were parts of completely different organisations who didn't always see eye to eye. And all we wanted was communication. We had flirtations with communication where, we had offers occasionally from people at the club. Lee Marshall, who became the fans liaison officer, only the second one at the club and now the third, following in my footsteps, who had a thankless task because he was not just spinning that plate, but he was spinning 3 or 4 or 5 other plates at the same time. So it's a massively positive time. I've already seen it on social media, and I know you guys, tend to avoid the social media. Malcolm's on Twitter, but doesn't go on very often. Gibbo, you're not on there, and I've seen a few people, and I mean a few, go, well, which fans are going to be involved? Who's going to be going up there? It doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me at all, because we're all now singing from the same hymn sheet. We're all now positive. And really, the only disagreements Newcastle fans should have now is the starting 11 and the substitutions, because the rest of it, they should just be sitting back and enjoying the ride. And that's where I'm at, lads. I think, for me, great news that we're getting our house in order behind the scenes, and great. It's just great for the football club. It's still one of those things, though, lads, and I'm sure you probably go through it as well, the same as me. Sometimes when you wake up, you still have to pinch yourself on a match day to remember where we are. And, we've only been in this position a year, and already we've made some fantastic strides forwards. And I think the words I would say, Gibbo, the best is yet to come.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. And I think they're very PR savvy, the current board, and they would go with the feel of the fans. Well, put another way, they wouldn't go against an open feeling of the fans, because they realise that this all for one and one for all thing that's happening at Newcastle, both in the dressing room, in the training ground, in the boardroom, with the fans, with the media, etc., etc. That is the key to where Newcastle are going. That is the shortcut, the feel-good factor. And I'm certain that will be kept as much as anything can be kept. And that's good news. That's great.
Yeah.
And get us up there competing in the transfer market with Liverpool, with Man City, with Manchester United. I'm talking about competing in the fair play.
Yeah. Stephen Kennedy wants to know, do you think the big six, John, are becoming more accepting of us now? I've seen a few articles talking about the big seven.
Well, yeah, one of the reasons why is that it's inevitable. You try to stop a steamroller running down the hill with no driver on, and you can't. You can just get out the way. And I think they're beginning to see it as inevitable. And they're beginning to be reassured, I think, by Newcastle's stance at Premier League meetings, because they're taking a very progressive stance. They're taking a very adventurous stance. They're looking ahead. They're looking at the big picture because they want to be part of the big picture. I think it's a love-hate relationship. It's always going to be, isn't it? I mean, they want to keep the big six. They don't want it to be the big seven. And they certainly don't want it to be the big eight. They would prefer it to be the big five or the big four, and not to have promotion and relegation, because they would like a blocked off house. They're not going to get that, and they can't stop us really joining. So I think there's a reluctant acceptance of the inevitable. As I say, if a steamroller is running downhill, you can't jump out in front of it and hold your hand up and say stop, can you?
Mal, what's your thoughts?
Absolutely. I just want to ask John a question, actually.
Go for it.
It was just something that I've read over the last few days, and it was 2 or 3 different lots of quotes from clubs, and I thought, this new Super League, it's not dead. It's still there in people's minds, and they are wanting to make it a reality. And of course, that's the situation where there's no relegation, no promotion. It's very much the American style league, where you've just got the regular number of clubs every single year. But what I was seeing just suggested to me that this isn't dead, that these 6 clubs, they still want it. They're after it. They want to create it.
It definitely isn't dead. It's officially dead, and I'm stressing officially, with the English clubs, because each club also got a backlash amongst their own fans saying, we don't want this. This is wrong for football. It's unhealthy. There's no promotion relegation. It's going to stagnate. It may sound good, but it isn't. And they reacted to their fans, oh, dearie me, we've got a rebellion on our hands. We don't want that. We're sorry we're out of it. But it is very much alive on the continent, Malcolm. The Italian clubs, etc., are still determined that this will happen sometime in the future. The test's going to come for the English clubs when the Italian clubs say, right, it's now going to happen. Are you with us or you're not? And you've either got to rebel and break away from the Premier League or you haven't. But it is, you're absolutely right. It is not dead, but the proactive is outside of this country at the moment. The other clubs that were going to be involved abroad, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I'm thinking, was it Juventus? They're certainly strong on this happening and won't let it die. The English clubs are lying low in the snake's belly because they're the ones that got the huge fan backlash, their own base, in the Liverpool fans, the Man United, the Man City, etc., etc. So they're lying doggo because they don't want to rattle the snake's nest yet again if it ain't happening at the moment. But certainly abroad, there's a great, almost open in terms of they're not trying to conceal it, that they still see that as a goer and still want it to happen. We know what's wrong with it. Before going into anything about it, this business of no promotion and relegation and a closed house, where if you're one of the clubs that's invited in, you don't get invited out. You're in for as long. Well, I mean, that's horrendous. That is a nonsense. That if that was in position now, Newcastle United wouldn't ever be able to be part of that because they're not part of the original 6 or any other club that may be taken over in the way we are. In other words, you're a killer of dreams, aren't you? You're a killer of the dreams of fans. And the whole of football, as far as I'm concerned, is built on dreams, being allowed to dream.
Yeah, yes. Except I also saw things being said by these new guys at St James Park that with Newcastle, what they're doing, because I couldn't help but think of Leicester, who won the Premiership, but then have sort of dropped all the way down and now are in serious financial trouble. And I just thought that's being taken. The Leicester situation is being noted very carefully by these new guys at St James Park, that in what they do, they're going to ensure that nothing like the Leicester situation ever develops. That
it almost
success, but we want to continue year after year after year having success.
The big difference is, Malcolm, that the Leicester guys haven't got anything like the financial clout of these fellas.
Of course.
The Leicester over punched their weight, didn't they, right from day one. It was marvellous. It was marvellous because it was a fairy tale, but they were over punching their weight. And that sucks you into spending more than you should too quickly. And if you don't get it all right, the balloon bursts. And they had their moment in the sun. They won the Premier League, they won the FA Cup, they won the Community Shield, which is a huge day out at Wembley. They had their moment in the sun, but it was unsustainable. You've got to be a Manchester United, a Manchester City, and Newcastle with their financial clout to be able to sustain it these days. There's a huge gap between the top 7 financially, not the top 7 in the league, and the rest. There's a huge gap between that.
Yes, absolutely. but taking all of that into account, that's why I have been so impressed with what these two guys at Newcastle, Eels and Ashworth, have been saying. If anybody wants to see the full thing, I think it's on NUFC.com, and it makes very good reading. And having read it, I really had a feeling of long-term satisfaction,
Sure.
if you like, with a confidence as well.
Fully understand that as well, but I think you're right, Mal, and I don't think that's gone away, but I still think it'll be a while before it gets pushed through, and it'll be interesting to see the angle that our owners take on that. Certainly, so Monkey Suit says if UEFA weren't changing the European tournaments, you can bet the Big Six would still be trying to roadblock us. I think UEFA have appeased them to avoid the Super League. Jules says if they pursue the Super League again, the Six can go but never come back and have no chance of playing in our league or cups. Much like the Liverpool tour, you can't have your cake, the LIV tour, so you can't have your cake and eat it, in my opinion, which is great. And Barcelona desperately need the Super League now, since they are about to get booted out of the Champions League. Lots of comments coming in about this. Alan Thompson says it's all about money, 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 and guaranteed money at that, lads. American owners are after their dreams, John and Malcolm. Government should step in, but will they? Interesting stuff. Always gets us talking.
Yeah, Boris Johnson actually threatened it, didn't he?
He did, yeah. 100%, mate. Yeah, he did. Okay.
That was a good point, Steve, just before we move on about Barcelona. They need it at the moment because they're going to go out the Champions League.
Yes.
In fact, Arsenal might be putting, your old club, Malcolm, might be putting a right wrong this season, the top of the league, where I think Man City might nick that before the season's ended. But they didn't make the Champions League last season, where if you were in the Super League, you'd be in permanently. We helped, if you remember, beating them 2-0 on the last home game. We helped to stop them qualifying for the Champions League. So they would be out the Champions League. Barcelona is going to be out the Champions League the next round of games. So they would have the security if they were in this breakaway Super League. But quite frankly, I don't want Newcastle in a breakaway Super League because it'll stagnate. You play the same teams all the time.
I couldn't agree more, John.
It doesn't matter if you're bottom of the league or second top of the league.
Yeah.
Who wants a league like that?
There's nothing that's refreshing it.
No.
And things need refreshing all of the time, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Clubber Lang likes a joke. He says, I've been prescribed anti-gloating cream today off the doctor. I can't wait to rub it in later, he says.
I like that one.
Thanks, Clubber. Mr. Anderson says, hi, gentlemen. Who are the strikers that you are taking to the World Cup? Great question, because it's imminent, John. It's on the horizon.
It is. And to be truthful, I've been so thrilled about Newcastle United. I haven't thought about the World Cup until it's about to come round. It's a matter, I really haven't given it any in-depth feeling whatsoever. It's a matter, isn't it, of who's going to be back up to Harry Kane. And we've all said on here, and I'm not going to regurgitate everything that we've already done, on ability, it would be Callum Wilson would be a shoo-in to be in the squad, but I don't think he will be at all because he's not fit enough. And if you take him as a tournament and he is one of your strikers, you can't change it when he gets injured during the World Cup.
Sure.
If he gets injured in the first week of the World Cup over there, you have a man light in your squad for the rest of the tournament. They won't take that risk. So they've then got to look at Ivan Toney, and they've got to look at Ollie Watkins, and they've got to look at everybody else that's around.
But Ivan Toney impressed you, John, enough to get to be selected for the England squad on Saturday?
Sorry?
Ivan Toney, did he impress you enough to get a place in the England squad? He certainly didn't with me. I thought he was invisible for a lot of the time.
He's a good penalty taker. He's never missed one, but that's about it at the moment. No. I mean, he was in the shadow. I mean, they tried to set it up for him by making him skipper because the skipper was out injured. But really, I mean, I was thrilled to bits. We've scored 9 goals in the last 2 games. Who would have thought that, guys? When we were struggling for goals earlier in the season, when Wilson was out and Bruno was out. I mean, we scored 9 goals in the last 2 games. And by the way, both sides have come bearing gifts, but I'm grateful to accept them. I mean, Fulham went down to 10 men after 8 minutes, and at Brentford give us 3 goals. But I'm quite happy to accept all that generosity because and I don't feel grateful because we took advantage. We were ruthless and we did the job. And you look at the mistakes Brentford made to present us with these goals. And why did they make them? Because the old Newcastle would have sat off midfield and waited for the ball to be kicked long and go into defensive mode. We went and pressed defenders. We went and pressed the goalkeeper. Almiron got his goal. It was only a tap-in because the keeper was caught flapping like a budgie in a cage. But the reason he did that was because Almiron went and closed him down.
Yeah.
And we've got the high press now, which is absolutely wonderful because it makes people flap and makes them make mistakes. So I'm totally grateful. I want Manchester United to make all the mistakes and be as generous as Brentford were and as Fulham were.
Yeah, and that's why I keep hearing the name Shelvey cropping up, that he's getting near to fitness and what have you. But I think he is exactly what the side doesn't need. He wants to drop off. Whereas we've got this high press. You can't have a midfielder who's wanting to sit back amongst the centre halves and even stop the centre halves from pushing up. And that's what Shelvey does.
What pleases me about the comeback boys at the moment is that we've got Bruno back, and my God, what a player he is. We've all said we needn't repeat it, but by Jove, he is the dog's hydraulics. He is the business. There's no question about that. We've got him back. We've got Callum Wilson back. It wasn't his best game on Saturday. He didn't play well on Saturday, but he plays like a centre forward, and therefore he occupies people and creates problems.
You see, I disagree with you that he didn't play well. He didn't take a great part in the actual play. But what he was doing was making space for others. All of
He missed a couple of chances, Malcolm, that he would normally play with.
I know. Yeah, but if you're going to score goals, you've got to miss them as well, John.
Yeah, I remember somebody wrote a book about that. I don't know who it was, but it wasn't a bad way of looking at life. But I mean, we've got Bruno back. We've got Callum Wilson back. That's huge. We're about to get back, anytime Eddie Howe wants him, Joe Linton and Sam Maximum, because they've got some mileage in their legs getting on in the last game. Now, all of a sudden, we've gone from not having those 4 at all, Bruno, Wilson, San Maximum, and Joe Linton, who dropped out with, and all 4's available on top of what's been going on. Now, isn't that terrific? Isn't that a boost? There's only Isaac that we're still looking towards that might increase the thing, taking Shelvey out of the equation for the moment. So it's all good. We'll go down there with the 2 main hitters in the side and the other 2 available to start on Sunday if he wants them to, Joe Linton and Sir Maxima, or to throw, he might start one and throw the other on as a sub. But that's all plus, and it's all plus at the moment. And let's enjoy it before we forget to put Callum Wilson in that cotton wool at the end of the game and he ends up with a leg injury. Let's enjoy it while they're all available.
I think there's a new T-shirt there for the food bank, John, if you're watching. Supermac and Gibbo, the dog's hydraulics.
Yes. I think that's okay, yeah.
And you can sign it as well. I'm still trying to work out what it means, though. But I'm sure somebody in the chat will tell us. Paul says, controversial opinion, Maximin doesn't start just yet and is a great impact player. Imagine bringing Isaac and Maximin on for the last 30 minutes on Sunday. And rumour has it, Isaac could be fit to be on the bench, John.
Yeah, I mean, we're now starting to be gluttons. We're now starting to be greedy and we'll want to start at the main course of pudding and then we'll start again. But yes, I mean, I've been thinking of the team, and I know we normally talk about it later, but just talking about who's on the bench and who starts, what I would do on Sunday, and I stress it's me because we shouldn't try to guess Eddie Howe because it's impossible. Eddie does his own thing.
Yes.
And if we won 4-1 at Fulham, so Eddie immediately kept an unchanged team, the thing being don't change a winning team. So we win 5-1. So in theory, you can keep the same team again. I wouldn't. I would replace Byrne, who I thought was poor at left back. He's not a left back. To me, Byrne played left back like Jack Charlton would have done. All long legs and knobbly knees, etc., instead of sweet flow and attacking. I know how much Byrne's loved, and nobody loves him better than I do. But I love him on the left side of a centre too. And he can play left back on occasions. Saturday was against Brentford was not his occasion. I would bring Target back in there. I would bring Joe Linton in for Longstaff, who I thought didn't have as good a game. He's done terrific. The midfield's terrific, but I would put Joe back in. And I would probably leave Murphy because he scored and he did his bit and all that. And I would bring San Maximum on as a sub and then play St. Maximum from the start against Everton on the Wednesday, because we go Sunday, midweek, weekend, again, 3 games in 8 days, and he's going to spread the load a little bit there, so you can keep St. Maximum for the home game against Everton, stick them on to get a few more miles in his legs, because the pack's going to be shuffled a little bit. He isn't going to play an unchanged team 3 times in a week. That's not Eddie's style. He will shuffle the pack during the week.
Thoughts, Malcolm? I mean, we'll look ahead to the game in a little bit more depth at the end of the programme and get your prediction. But, he's going to have a choice to make. I mean, I didn't think he was going to change the team. I thought he was going to make 2 changes to the team at the weekend, but he didn't. He went with an unchanged team. He's got to. Yes. I agree with John. He's got to change it this weekend.
I think he will change it. Yes, I think that Manchester United is a quite different task to the other 2 sides, but also I found myself eating humble pie after the Brentford game, because I'd actually talked Byrne up prior to the game, and so big apologies for that, because he had a bit of a stinker, and when we started to see why he isn't a left back, so if he is the sole change, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But maybe there'll be 1 or 2 others. But you mentioned Murphy. I still think that there is a lot in Murphy that will be great value to the Newcastle side. And what I noticed on last weekend was that he and Wilson was starting to strike up quite a little relationship together. There was an understanding building, and when Wilson had that ball, all of a sudden, who was flying into the box? It was Murphy, and I think that a lot of what Murphy does is hugely positive, and Wilson's recognising that. Murphy is the best crosser of the ball in the club, and I've said that for a long time now. And also he'll look to get shots in. He'll look to get into goal-scoring positions. And I think that he, ahead of Bruno, I think is creating quite a strength to Newcastle.
I think I could play ahead of Bruno.
Well, yeah, I understand your sentiment on that, but Murphy is showing he knows how to react to Bruno. And that's important. There are some people, perhaps Sean Longstaff, for example, and I think even Willock as well. They don't know quite yet how to react to Bruno to make it all for the positive. But Murphy, he's seeing it, and he's reacting to it, reacting really well. I think also, just on the point of Manchester United, I think the mood at Old Trafford has been so poor and low for such a long time. I don't think that they can actually spark themselves. We watch Newcastle United and they come out and you just see that all 11 players are just full of spark and that they want to get going. They want to get into the opposing box. They want to get shots at goal now. And it's all very exciting. Manchester United, I'm really not sure about them. I think their attitude in general is very poor indeed. And when a side is going at a game like Newcastle are just at the moment, that's the last thing that a side like Man United want to face.
Interesting. It's going to be an interesting weekend. We'll talk about that in about 15 minutes time. Any other questions that we've got, get them in as soon as you can. Alan Thompson asks one which is topical. Is Bruno better than Kenny Wharton, or is he the best Newcastle midfielder we've ever had? We had Ross Gregory on Tuesday, Gibbo, who was running the poll on the Chronicle website. I don't know whether that's been announced yet. I think it's the end of the week. But is Bruno the best midfielder Newcastle have ever had? And I said no, and I still maintain no, because in my time as a supporter, the best midfielder we've ever had has been Rob Lee, pound for pound, the best midfield signing I have ever seen, for the cost, for the amount of games he played, for the amount of performances he put in, for the amount of goals he scored. Just a great all-rounder, and for me, the best midfielder. Very close to him was Gary Speed for me. What about you, John? You've got a little bit more under your belt, shall we say?
Well, what you're going to say is I'm a bit older, like by 100 years. So I'm
not 100 years.
Hadn't seen and no, by the way, I absolutely blanked the fact that I was supposed to see Hughie Gallagher play at Newcastle because I didn't. So there. But yes, I know where you come from. And I find the whole thing fascinating and wonderful because I love discussions that are opinion, where there's no actual answer. It's a matter of choice. And I love all that. And there's all sorts of midfielders. There's midfielders, for example, somebody gave me a list the other day, and David Batty was in it together with Paul Gascoigne. Well, one's a defensive midfield player and one's a creative midfield player. You don't compare them both. It's like saying who was the best player, Willie McFall or Terry Ibbott. I mean, you can't do it. It doesn't work that way. But it's fascinating because the other question, Steve, when you were talking about and we've had some good midfielders, and the fella on my right, as on the screen, has benefited by a couple of good midfielders himself in his time. Although he made the midfielder look good by putting the ball in the back of the net. But I ask another question. Are you saying who was Newcastle's best midfielder when they were at Newcastle, or who was the best midfielder ever? And to give you an example of what I'm talking about, Steve, is Paul Gascoigne. He was a kid at Newcastle, played well at Newcastle, but he wasn't, in his time at Newcastle, the best midfielder that's ever been. But he's the best midfielder if you took the whole of his career in. But his great days weren't necessarily with Newcastle because they were at the start of his life. So do you judge on who played the best while at Newcastle, or who was the best player all in? Because Beardsley would take some beating as a top midfielder, but not necessarily in his formative years at Newcastle. So it's how you judge as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is very much so, John. Yeah, and of course you mentioned Terry Hibbett a while back.
With
Terry
you,
was
yes,
one of the most phenomenal passers of a ball going.
absolutely.
You know,
And in those times, and I'm
Mm.
not saying these are the best, but in those times when you were at St James's Park, and you go Terry Ibbott, you go Tommy Craig, you go Jimmy Smith, and you go Tommy Cassidy. There's four players, none of whom were real slouches.
You've missed out Tony Green.
Who was just a very short time.
Yeah.
I've also missed out Jeff Nulty, but I did that one on purpose.
Yeah, I think anybody would leave him out.
I did that one on purpose. If Tony Green had been able to play more games, he would have been up there. But
Yes.
if I come all the way back to what Steve originally said, I think if you take it on how they played for Newcastle, so that puts Gaza, that reins Gaza in, because the great Gaza of Italia 90 wasn't with Newcastle. If you look at Newcastle United, Rob Lee does take some beating, and Gary Speed's up there. But I'll tell you what, my hope is that Bruno, if he's not the best now, he will be the best before he leaves Newcastle. And I hope he leaves Newcastle for his pension. Not for another club.
Yes.
And I think that's the problem, Mal, isn't it? It's a bit early for Bruno. I mean, look, he's great. He potentially, in a couple of years' time, we could actually talk about him as a great. But it's a little bit early to ask the question about Bruno, I think.
Well, yeah, and also, good heavens,
great fun.
He's hardly played double figures for Newcastle, and yet there's all sorts in newspapers and else and on the internet that he'll be at Real Madrid before the end of next season. You know, so I don't know. I think the best thing he can do is just keep playing, and let's see where he and Newcastle United can actually take each other.
It all depends on longevity. It all depends on how long he stays here. And I believe that he passionately does want to be a legend in Newcastle, and he can become a legend. And if we keep making progress, he doesn't need to go away. If we keep making progress, he can be part of that and be the David Silva that was at Manchester City, the De Bruyne, etc., etc. He can do that. But just going on another way, it depends on how long you stay. I read the other day, and I can follow the theory, Haaland will beat Shearer's goal-scoring record in the Premier League. No, he won't. And you know why he won't? Because he won't be here long enough.
Exactly.
He'll be away in 2 years' time to Real Madrid or to Paris Saint-Germain or to Barcelona if they've got that clout back. No, he won't beat Shearer's record whatsoever, because he won't be in the Premier League long enough to do that.
Yeah. And the fee's 175 million, I believe, the get-out clause for a foreign team coming in.
I tell you what, in a couple of seasons' time, somebody will snap the hand off for that.
Yeah, yeah, they will.
Yeah.
If they spent 100 million on Grealish, they'll go for. And if Haaland's going up to 50 goals a season, they'll take your hand off for 175, wouldn't they, Malcolm?
Oh yes, wouldn't they just? Yeah.
Bruno has the defensive ability of Batty, the passing ability of Gaza, and can beat players with a trick. So it's fair to say Bruno is the most complete midfielder we've had, says Billy.
There's a wonderful point, and I just would like to take up Billy and say, Billy, I know exactly where you're coming from. He's 3 midfield players rolled into one. He's the best defensive midfield player we've got because he puts his foot in. He's the best orthodox midfield player we've got, and he's the best Terry McDermott finisher running from midfield into the box that we've got. So he has 3 midfield types in one. And isn't that wonderful? It's like I said, Maddison is 2 rolled into one. He's best on assists and he's best on goals. Bruno can do a bit of all 3, and that's quite exceptional.
Rachel can't stop singing the Bruno song. So Monkey Suit says, what if Haaland comes to Newcastle, Gibbo?
Yeah,
Shearer's record.
Well, that'll be wonderful, but he won't beat Shearer's record either because he won't be here long enough. He will move around all his career for a fortune. He won't do a Harry Kane and stick with one club all these. And by the way, I'm not playing him down. Isn't he a different class? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. He is definitely the hydraulics, but he's not our hydraulics. And he played for Manchester City, who were very grateful to get a draw at St James's Park, if I remember rightly.
Ryan's getting the excuses in early. He says, remember, Haaland plays for City. Shearer did it for Newcastle. It's a totally different story. Good point.
Correct. It's twice as hard to do it for us as it is to do it for them, because look what's round Haaland. By the way, let's stop putting him down, because he's a different class, full point. Different class. But by Jove, he's got a lot around him to set him up, hasn't he? Mind you, when the rest of them at Copenhagen, they didn't score a hatful.
To be honest, we've seen it. We've seen a robot in government this week, Malcolm, reading out minutes. Haaland could be a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
AI, it's the new technology, isn't it? Gibbo, have you seen that this week?
Yeah, I did see it. Yes,
in the House of Lords, that young lady was a robot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Haaland
Well, he is a goal-scoring robot, isn't he?
Well, that's what I mean. It could all get wiped off. Who knows? Have Newcastle made a mistake not signing Paqueta? Says John.
I don't think that they could have done all of that. John was explaining how it works in the transfer market, where your limitations are these days, and Newcastle were limited as to the business they did. And at the very time Bruno was signed, I think it was that Newcastle had the freedom to bring in Bruno or Paqueta, and they couldn't do a double deal on it. There's always another time. Always another time.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that, John? He's starting to find his feet. He's certainly linking up with Scamacca quite well at West Ham. But my view of that is that I think we got the right one. John, you're on mute, John. John, we've lost your sound, John.
No sound, John.
We've lost your sound. We've lost your sound, John. You've gone. Unmute your mic. Oh, he's got to get Marjorie in. He's going to get Marjorie in. We'll come back. We'll come back to when he's got that sorted. Barry Hogan says, "Is it not even more annoying that Haaland was born in Leeds? He could have played for England." Here's John's assistant. BT says, asked about Bruno's future. Ashworth said, "Absolutely. Do I not want to sell Bruno? He's a top player and a really important part of this journey." Go on, Mal.
Yeah, that was interesting about Haaland. Did he actually? No, he wasn't born in this country, was he?
I don't know.
He was born in Norway.
Was he? All right, okay.
Oh, you're thinking of his dad.
His dad.
Yeah.
Mine, he was lucky he was born at all after Roy Keane decapitated Haaland's dad. I mean, if he'd been quarter of an inch the other side with the studs, he wouldn't have been born.
You're right. You're right there. Tom Dixon says, brilliant last week, Malcolm and John. Would you play the same side on Sunday, or do you think we'll change it? We'll cover that, but we will come to it in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The Dan Ashworth thing as well. Ashworth said, I can't lie to you and say we'll never have to sell a player. That doesn't happen anywhere. Yeah, there was a lot of honesty that came from those interviews over the course of the weekend, and it was great.
There was.
Great to hear that. Great to hear it. Let's talk a little bit about the ground, guys, where you stand on this. Not whether we should be building on it or moving it, because we've had that discussion. But the naming rights, John, is something which Mike Ashley did without asking us, and crowbarred the St James's Park off in the middle of the night and upset everybody to the point where, there was protests, etc., and a lot of bad feeling around the club. These owners have said it's going to be a financial deal and we will consult supporters, and from our perspective, it will be put back into the playing side. That's music to our ears, John. I've still seen a few people complaining, mind, but it'll always be St James's Park to us. But if we're getting a multi-million or billion-pound deal, I think it might just sweeten the blow a little bit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm a traditionalist. It might have something to do with my age, but I am a traditionalist. And for 130 years, it's been St James's Park. And we've played at St James's Park, the cathedral on the hill. I don't want to move the ground. They're not talking about that. They're talking about extending it from where it is, which is difficult but not impossible. and they're talking about the possible change in name. When it was put up by Ashley, I was furiously against it on 3 fronts. First, because St James's Park has been my resting place for all my life. Secondly, he never even asked any of us about it, and he was doing so badly on looking after the club elsewhere that we got the feeling that the only reason there would be a change in the name was because it was of some obscure benefit to himself and only himself. And thirdly, we had a great worry that we would end up with Durex Park or something of that nature, because he would sell it to Wonga, whoever came along, and that was offensive to us. I can see where the current ownership is coming from, because the biggest way to make a big killing in one fell swoop is the name of the ground. It depends how it happens. I'm thrilled it's going to all the fans, because I think the fans have got to have a say. They've got to be comfortable, because the club is owned by the fans from cradle to grave. The people that own the club, be it John Hall, be it Ashley, be it the current lot, are custodians for a period of time. They come in, they own it, they go out. They aren't the passionate guys whose whole life is the club, like the current fans are. So the fans have got to be consulted, and they've got to be on side. If you can call it something with dignity, maybe St James's Park, something on the end of it, or something St James's Park, and it is a decent name and a good name, not like Wonga or some of the things that we had in the past, then it's possible, and it is for our good. And we've been consulted, and we've been taken into consideration. And Ashley never did. I never knew that Ashley ran Newcastle United. If Ashley owned Harrods, he would have told customers coming into the shop, hurry up and buy that in the corner and bugger off, because I'm wanting to close the doors. I mean, you can't treat customers, people that make your business, the way he did. And I'm open to what we're going to be told. I was not open to anything Ashley was going to tell me, because none of it was from the heart of a Geordie. It was from the heart of a man trying to sell football shirts. So I am open to discussion, and I think every Newcastle United fan will be open to discussion.
Yes, but they must seriously consider that when it comes to how much you can spend in the transfer market to improve your side, they take the overall income of a club and then set your transfer figure. And if Newcastle are doing a massive, great ground sponsorship scheme that brings in hundreds of millions, that is going to seriously expand the transfer wealth that Newcastle can put to use.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is the reason, Malcolm, that it is being considered.
Yes.
Because it increases hugely the revenue Newcastle get in a year, and we are allowed to spend a percentage of that in the transfer market. So it is a way of increasing our punching power in the transfer market, which is why I think fans will consider it. With Ashley, there was a feeling that any money, I'm not saying this was correct and would have happened, but the feeling was, would any money that come in from a name change be put straight back into the team? No. We might still continue buying Joselu, whoever. So there was a very different feeling. This is to increase our power in the transfer market, and that's a massive plus to start with. But let them go down the road where history is not destroyed in one fell swoop. But at the same time, nobody's going to be stubborn enough to say we want us all to work in a straitjacket so we can't buy anybody over 60 million, or we're snookering ourselves for 3 seasons. We want to be able to increase that side of it. So it is fascinating. Every avenue's got to be considered. And I think this is the only contentious one. I think everything else that would happen is not contentious at all. The only contentious one is changing 130 years of history. But if it's done for the right reasons, Man City have done it, Arsenal have done it, etc., etc.
Yeah. But Steve had put up the message where it said that a suggestion that do something like Brand X at St James's Park. I'm sure that would be acceptable.
Yeah,
would it not, John?
I would say so. I think that's what most fans are saying as well. John Ball just basically saying, apart from Kevin De Bruyne.
So sorry, Steve, but that's sort of a name like that is just showing a strong partnership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a debate which will continue. We'll look forward to hearing what the fans who are selected to go up and speak to the club come back with. Kevin De Bruyne and Bruno is what John Ball's saying. He says, those two probably the best midfielders in the Premier League. I think we've just all agreed on that. John says, remember Wonga pushed the PR story that they bought the naming rights and changed it back to St James's Park. Some firms may be wary of the backlash. The only one to rename was Ashley, and he paid nout. And Sir Monkey Suit says, every fan of Newcastle or opposition fans refer to it as St James's Park, regardless, so it should be a no-brainer. The owners won't take it lightly and give it a name worthy of us. Okay, last 5 minutes, lads. Manchester United away this weekend, and Newcastle United travelling down to what they've, and I stress they have named the Theatre of Dreams. Will Newcastle be able to make it the Theatre of Nightmares? Well, let's hope so. There are injury doubts over Harry Maguire, Anthony Martial, Donny van de Beek.
I was banking on Harry Maguire being...
Sadly, he's not available by the looks of it. And Brandon Williams, McTominay is going to be suspended, but the hearing for Cristiano Ronaldo's improper conduct charge remains unscheduled, meaning that he won't be suspended on Sunday. And Martin Dubravka is probably going to be a steward at the match because he doesn't seem to be playing any football down there. Referees Craig Pawson, VAR is Jared Gillette. Mad this really, that this game isn't televised, and it's a 2:00 kickoff at Old Trafford on Sunday. So, John, you've said he's going to change the team. What's your prediction going to be?
On the result, well, we needn't walk in fear. I mean, we have gone to Manchester United in my time fearful. We've only twice that I can recall won in Manchester United. Once was with Malcolm when we went famously from losing to Hereford and on league side in the cup to the next Saturday beating Charlton Best in Law. And the only other time in my time I recall Newcastle United winning at Old Trafford was when Cabaye scored, Yohan Cabaye. So we haven't got a history down there. I don't think that matters one jot. I don't think history will play a part on Sunday. Newcastle United have got 1 defeat in 9, and that come in the 98th minute at Liverpool when the referee had swallowed the pea in his whistle and was determined not to blow it until Liverpool scored. I also prefer to take a look at and take my line from the fact that Newcastle drew 3-3 with Manchester City when Haaland was leading the most potent forward line in this country, and they had to come from 3-1 down to get a 3-3. They played Manchester United. They all got a hat-trick and they beat them 6-3. So why should we worry about them? We shouldn't worry about them. I'm not pretending it's going to be easy because they've got players. If we lay off them and we produce a passive atmosphere, they've got a chance because they'll come and do their flicks and their tricks and etc. If we are aggressive and get in their face, and by aggression, I'm not meaning like Tommy Smith and Norman Bites-Your-Leg Hunter. I mean just close down, high press, in your face. They don't like it. They haven't got natural leaders. They used to have natural leaders. You think of the Fergie sides where Keane was a natural leader. Gary Neville was a natural leader. There was natural leaders all over the park. They haven't got good characters. They can be weak in the face of aggression. And if we get up and around them, they're in trouble. And I'm fully expecting us not to lose, and I've just got to decide whether we draw or whether we win.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going for a 2-2 draw.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you, Steve, on that. That's the scoreline that I have a feeling about. In the hope that Newcastle do score 2, but only concede 1. As you were saying, John, I don't think there is such a moody football squad in this country right now. I don't think things are right with a number of players. I can imagine that there's some right old squabbles go on in the dressing room,
sure,
and on the training ground, and yet we're seeing Newcastle absolutely blend together, and making one hell of a strong side, and I think that in going to Old Trafford, that the kind of attitude that Newcastle take with them, that will win out on the day. Whether we're able to win, I don't know. It's always a tough ask away from home, but I certainly don't think that Newcastle will lose, and I haven't been able to say that for a very long time.
I'm going for a draw, not necessarily 2-2, but I'm going for a draw. But I do believe we can win. And if there's a feeling that nothing's impossible, the thing for me that tells us nothing is impossible is that Miguel Almiron is currently our top scorer. Nothing's impossible, guys.
That's right. Well, let's hope they can follow in the footsteps of Malcolm's team, beating off Hereford in the Cup, the invasion of the Parkers, and then straight to Old Trafford to win, which is probably that win that Keith Roll's going on about in that record. 37 games played, 1 win, drawn 10, lost 26 since 1974. Thanks for that, Keith. Much appreciated. Lads, as always, that hour's passed too quickly. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to all the moderators. Good to see a good team of you in there doing some sterling work as always. I'm back at 4:30 tomorrow night for the Three Amigos. And on Saturday morning, I'm going to be here with Lee Clark for some pre-match patter. And don't forget, Match Day Live on Sunday, because whenever I go to Old Trafford, Newcastle get beat. So I've sold me ticket for this weekend. We're not going to get beat. Okay, lads. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Indeed.
Keep
Enjoy your football
guys.
over the weekend, everyone.
Keep the faith.
A big thanks to our sponsors, Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, based on Old Durham Road in Gateshead. Their phone number is 0191 478 2730. You can email Darren at darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk or go to the website darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists based on Nunn Street. The GOHD.com is their website. And thanks again to 3 Property Investments, who specialise in sourcing investment properties for their clients who are looking to invest in the North East. They offer a full in-house service from sourcing the deals to managing the properties for you. They've done over 100 plus deals in the past 12 months for clients all over the UK. Give them a follow on Instagram, matty.patter_northeast property and phil.reed_northeast property, or email phil@3property.co.uk if you're interested in getting a good property deal. Thanks to the lads at Mr. Vicky's Handmade in Cumbria. These are hot sauces and you can find them at mrvickies.co.uk or place an order by ringing 01768 210 102. Thanks also to the lads at Blowhole Brewery, a fine amount of ales available from their website, www.blowholebrewery.com. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video technology. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe, hit the badge in the corner, and you can subscribe for free. Still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video and click share to share to your social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and the rest. And if you want to become a member, click join underneath this video, or you can put your smartphone over the QR code. It will take you to the membership section of the website. If you choose to go that way, then you will get a pen, a cup, a scarf, and a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw for a one-off payment of £25. We also give you something for free. If you want a car window sticker, email john@nufcmatters.com, and he will send you one if you are a subscriber. We also help the food bank on here. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is the matchday bucket. If you go there, you can make a virtual donation at any time of the year. And don't forget, Peter Beardsley Soccer School, October half term, Monday the 24th to Friday the 28th of October. You can book now, peterbeardsley.soccerschool.com. Peter's also running Monday night training on the 26th of October. Again, the same website. And if you want to meet Peter Beardsley, well, you've got 3 chances. Newcastle Legends game, Friday, October the 14th. The Peter Beardsley talk-in is taking place after the game. Tickets for this are available from NUFCmatters.com. Adult admission is £5, junior admission is £2. The talk-in is adults only, and that is a tenner. And the events are all taking place at the Fox Hunters Pavilion in North Shields. We've got Peter Beardsley available, tickets available for the St Dom's Catholic Club show. You need to go straight to their website and you just buy your tickets there. And for this one at the Irish Centre, tickets are available now on NUFCmatters.com. Don't forget, Supermac at the Dog and Parrot, every pre-match and every post-match, every home game. And John Gibson and John Anderson are at Pumphrey's pre-match only. If you did like our true crime stuff, it has all migrated to the True Crime channel. So get yourself across there on YouTube and subscribe today.